Hi everyone. Hi Rich.
Good
Good to
evening.
see you.
Hello, mate. Thanks for joining us today.
Not at all. Thank you so much for the invite. Something I've been looking forward to, and I've been speaking to Rivo for a while about this. So it's great we've managed to get a date in the diary, and thank you for inviting me down this evening
And
for your quite infamous podcast.
thank you very much for joining us, mate. For those who don't know you, just tell us what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, of course. So I've been in my current position since January of this year, really. So I'm quite a newbie to the FA. So I actually do the same role as what Mark Rivers does in Berkshire, but for Hampshire. So I'm the CCD in Hampshire. Started the role officially as of the 1st of January, but I kind of had December to get my feet under the table, so to say. And I've thoroughly enjoyed the role and the variety that it brings over the course of the last couple of months, really. Obviously, we're all in a very frustrating and unprecedented time at the moment where we've just pressed pause, but I'm looking forward to, I'm sure, as everyone is, of getting back out on the grass and doing my job in terms of supporting the coaches in Hampshire.
No, definitely, mate. And yeah, it's been an interesting start for you. But
very much so, yeah.
Yeah, it's only get better.
Yeah.
Of getting back on the grass. Where did it all begin for you? People will know from your accent. It's not very.
Yeah, so you can probably, it isn't Hampshire. It's certainly not Berkshire, is it? The Queen's County, I think it is. Do you know what, Rich? When I was thinking about tonight and potentially the questions you might ask me, I did a little bit of soul searching for this question. I think it really started for me in around about 1998. So that's gone back quite a long time now. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm originally from the north of England. And it started when I was in year 10. So I am going back a long time now. And I don't know if you guys remember, but in year 10, I think it's still the same now, you have to do some work experience. So I remember going to my careers advisor. And I love football at the time, Rich. I was never good enough to earn a living out of the game. I think it was every kid's dreams trying to be a professional. That wasn't going to happen for me. And I went to careers advisor, and I remember sitting down with her, and she says, right, you've got to work experience next week. What would you like to do? So I'll be honest with you, I didn't really enjoy school very much. I weren't very academic, but I knew I wanted to be outside. And at that time, Rich, coaching probably wasn't seen as a career pathway. So we had some new computer software at the school careers, and she asked me all these questions, and it came out with two options. It was either for me to go and work in a garden centre or as a greenskeeper, because I think the answers that I gave were kind of grass or green related. So I left that meeting thinking, well, I don't know if, and no disrespect to those two career pathways, but it wasn't for me. But I remember going back to the next lesson. My next lesson was PE, and I spoke to someone that was very close to me at the time. Our head of PE was a gentleman called Mr. Field, and I said to him about what had happened. I said, sir, next week I've got to go and do work experience, and I haven't got a clue. And he said to me, he said, well, have you ever thought about doing some coaching? And the week later, I did some inquiries. I went down to my local primary school and I volunteered. And I loved it, Rich. And if I'm honest with you, that was kind of where the love of being on the other side of the fence. I mean, I played for my school team and played grassroots, etc. But it was the first time really I'd been in charge of kids. And I remember going home on the Friday of that week, and we had to write a report about it. And it was probably one of the best pieces of work that I'd written because I really enjoyed writing it. So that was kind of where my first connection with kids and coaching the game came from. And it was probably a chance meeting with a careers advisor, some new computer system that started what is for me now what my livelihood is, really. So a bit of a different story, probably not one that you've heard before. It is a great one, to be honest. So that was where it started, and since then, Rich, I'll be honest with you, I've been on quite a different journey than most in terms of what I've done in my career. Went to uni. I did a French and German degree, which is quite random. Qualified as a teacher, so I kind of knew that working with kids either in a classroom or potentially in a coaching environment was going to come at some point, and that's really what brought me down to the south of England in 2006 in a teaching capacity initially. That's then led into football. So that's a little bit about my journey. Quite a long one and quite a different one with lots of different avenues off it.
Yeah. Prior to becoming company coach developer for
Yeah,
Hampshire, you was obviously an FA affiliate tutor as well.
I
How
was.
did you
Yeah,
get
so
into that? Yeah.
yeah, an interesting one really. So when I moved down here in 2006, straight from university, I was teaching in Hampshire. So that's kind of where the Hampshire connection comes in. I was teaching a variety of different subjects. I was in a private school, so I was teaching a little bit of German, a little bit different geography, history, really whatever you kind of do in your first year as an NQT. But alongside that, in the evening, I started doing some volunteer coaching, and that kind of led me down the pathway then of what was to become a 13-year career working in academy football. And really, it was from kind of my connections in academy football that brought me down the role of being an FA tutor, which I was doing on a part-time basis for the last 10 years. So it's kind of everything merging together, part-time coaching, teaching career, and then kind of being on the other side of the desk where I did my coaching qualifications, but then opened the door up for me to be an FA affiliate tutor. And obviously now I'm in a very lucky and fortunate position to be doing it on a full-time basis.
You said you was in an academy there. Which academy was that?
Yeah, so I worked at three. I had 5 fantastic years at Portsmouth. That was from 2006 to 11. I worked in the foundation phase there. And then after they got relegated and the club unfortunately went into administration, I moved to Aldershot Town. Probably my 2 best years, Rich, if I'm honest. That was when Aldershot Town were in the Football League, and we had 2 fantastic years there. Again, though, unfortunately, the club went into administration, which kind of follows me around, Rich. Which I can assure you, it's not because of my wages, but I think I've just been quite unlucky in terms of that. And unfortunately, the world we're in nowadays with such insecurity of football, it is one of the disadvantages of this job. And when I left Aldershot, had a little bit of a break just to really concentrate on my FA tutoring. And then I joined Brighton in 2013, and I had 6 fantastic years there. And I left Brighton last year, and I worked across the YDP ages. So, I've had a really good, really enjoyable 13 years. Very tough, long hours, combining that alongside a full-time teaching job. It was, 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, but I certainly wouldn't regret it, and I don't regret it to this day. So that's a little bit about me and kind of my journey to joining the FA as of January of this year.
Nice. It's a great journey, mate. A lot of experience as well. Yeah.
Very much so, yeah.
You mentioned earlier about, I think you said it was in year 10, and so your teacher at the time said, "Well, inspired coaching." Is that who inspired you to coach, or was there any other people who inspired?
He was part of a coaching team. So the school that I went to in the north of England, Rich, football it tends to was at the time. They only kind of did it in terms. So my school was traditionally a rugby school and a cricket school. So I kind of had to just persevere through those other terms because my passion very much was football. And we were very lucky during my football season when it was during term time. We had a gentleman called Paul Mariner. I don't know if you remember him, but he used to play for Ipswich. He played for Plymouth and he played for Arsenal. So he was probably the first person that I had contact with that had played at the highest level. I mean, he was an England international. So that together with kind of Mr. Field, who I always had the best relationship with. Whenever I was in trouble, I went to see Mr. Field, and he, as it tends to be, I think if you speak to any person that works in the sport industry, they tend to have that relationship with sport teachers, just probably because they were similar sort of personalities. But it was Paul Mariner who probably gave me the first insight into what elite coaching looked like. And I mean, we had an all right school team. We didn't set any records alike, but he really brought some structure and really started looking on the tactical side of things. And probably he was one of the first inspirations for me. So going off the back of that work experience week to then kind of seeing what the next level of coaching looks like, I knew that eventually at some point in my life that that would come back round. And as I've described, I had to kind of go through a foreign language degree and going into teaching to kind of come back to that. But he was certainly somebody. I guess in addition to that, I've had the pleasure of working with some fantastic academy managers. John Malling at Brighton, probably a name that maybe not everybody knows, but in terms of the Cap 1 academies, he was someone that gave me a wonderful opportunity to go and look in the youth development phase, which I've never done before. Dave Wright and Ian Buckman, who are also who I worked with at Portsmouth, and then they moved on to Brighton. They kind of gave me my first chance in football, and probably the people that have inspired me the most, Rich, are those that have given me an opportunity, and they're probably the people that I've not forgotten about. And certainly, I think football is certainly an academy football. It is a small world, and someone taught me many years ago that never make enemies in football because it will come to bite you on the backside. And they're people that no matter where I went on my journey, I kept in contact with, and I was lucky enough to work with them again. From a tutor perspective, I'll probably say Carl Plunkett, who I know that you know very, very well. He used to be a tutor, an affiliate, am I right, in Barton Books, but I had the pleasure of working with him, and I worked with him across quite a lot of level 1, 2s and on 2A for B delivery, and he's had a coach, and I still believe, I think at the moment at Reading, and we still keep in contact. So they were probably people from both my school, from kind of my academy background, but then going on to work with from an FA tutor perspective that certainly I remember and still keep in close contact with.
No, definitely, mate. What about current day? What coaches do you admire, whether that be local level or in the elite?
I think from an elite perspective, I mean, I've done probably what a lot of coaches do. I've immersed myself, certainly at the moment, in lockdown and isolation. It's probably given us all a chance to self-reflect and go on lots of webinars and do reading that we've put on the back burner because we've just simply not had time. So I've just finished reading Guardiola's books. I've read all 3 of them now. Unbelievable mindset. I'd love to spend an hour with him over a coffee and just pick his brains. I'm sure most grassroots coaches would. But I think I'm quite lucky in the fact that I've lived in Germany. I've lived in Austria. So I tend to kind of broaden my horizons a little bit in terms of looking at coaches abroad. So I'm a huge fan of Julian Nagelsmann, who's at Red Bull Leipzig at the moment. And also my wife's Dutch, so I've had a lot of pleasure, Rich, of spending time in Holland and watching the likes of Erik ten Hag at Ajax, having a look at the way that they played. Certainly, we had the pleasure of watching them last year and how far that they got in the Champions League. So they're kind of coaches that I admire because similar to me. I mean, Julian Nagelsmann especially, he never really played very long in terms of a career. He went to coaching at 28. I mean, he's only 32 now, and he's probably on the wanted list of quite a few top clubs around the world. So I tend to broaden my horizons a little bit. If you're asking me for kind of an English role model at the moment, probably a little bit of a curveball. I really like Sean Dyche. And I think the reason why I like him is just because I really honour his values and his behaviours. I like the way he talks. He talks a lot of honesty. I think what he's done at Burnley and the teams that he's managed has been near on remarkable for a club that certainly doesn't have the riches that Guardiola and co have certainly got to work with. So I tend to kind of attach myself to coaches in the pro game that have maybe had a little bit of a similar sort of journey to me in terms of they've had to prove people wrong. Maybe not had the longest playing careers, but I've certainly tried to do things a little bit different, which is what I try to do, if I'm honest. So I guess they will probably be the coach that I admire.
That's a great answer, mate. Who do you support out of interest?
I'm a Leeds fan.
Oh, of course you are, yeah.
So I was gonna, I guess it'd be rude of me not to mention Bielsa.
What do you take? What do you make of?
Sorry.
What do you make of Bielsa?
He's just different, isn't he? He's just. Again, it's interesting that from reading Guardiola's books, he calls him almost godlike. That if you listen to any of the top managers, certainly the Argentine and the Spanish coaches, they've got a lot of their ideas and their philosophies from Bielsa. So, he is unique. He is, in terms of the way that he sees the game, he's almost like a professor and a scientist. In terms of getting every inch of potential and talent out of those Leeds players. I've never seen another Leeds manager do that. And, you know, he is probably ahead of his time, even for his age. And my hope is obviously when we do come through this, that we can finish the season, and hopefully next year my beloved team are wearing Premier League lions on their sleeves and not still in the, because I think that he deserves it, and it'll be interesting to see next year if we do get promoted how he changes and how he adopts, and to see what his transfer philosophy is like, etc. But no, he is quite a unique character, but one that, again, I think as a coach we probably need to admire and certainly look at and learn from. So yeah.
No, definitely, mate. And just touching on that, when you mentioned about Guardiola's books, Elliott's his actual ideas are quite simple, but the detail he goes into to achieve them is scary.
It is, yeah. And I think that, you know, Johan Cruyff once said that football's a very simple game, but playing simple football is very, very difficult. And I think Guardiola probably is a really good example of that. And it's interesting that a lot of his ideas have come from his time at Barcelona under Cruyff, under La Masia kind of ideas. So yeah, that for me was something that I wanted to do. I mean, his books are excellent, and they kind of follow his journey from Barcelona to Bayern to then into City, and you know, when I read these books, Rich, what I've got to, and I've learned to do over my career, is not to try and copy and model them, but actually just maybe take out the bits that I like, and how does that now fit for me as a coach, or now as a coach educator at the FA, really. So that's kind of how I use role models, certainly in the pro game, to better myself.
Yeah, Adam Colley, who was on there the other week, said coaches are like thieves. You just take bits and pieces out of there's nothing wrong with that, because you can everyone's different as well. So that's cool. Yeah. Going back to, like, I suppose your academy days, you were with Brighton most recently. What was your coaching philosophy? And I suppose, was that more determined by the philosophy of the actual academy themselves, or the club?
The playing philosophy was, Rich, and that was probably something that I didn't have any say in. And I think probably looking back on my career today, that's probably the one bit that I still need to grow and develop, because I actually only really worked and I've only really experienced working for an employer, i.e. a pro club, that's kind of given me their playing philosophy. There you go, bring it alive. So that's probably still something in terms of where I'm at now in my development that I still want to develop, and that's certainly the reason why I'm reading the books, and I'm looking at the likes of Nagelsmann and other people like that do things a little bit different to try and grow that and fill that void. In terms of my coaching philosophy, that has evolved and changed so much, Rich. I mean, if I look at my first days when I first came down here in 2006, very stop, stand still, very shouty, very death by Austin, if I'm honest. At the time, though, probably that was what the courses were telling us to do. It's certainly what maybe the clubs wanted from us. They wanted us to really just stuff the information into the kids and expect them to then regurgitate at the weekend. But so that probably for me has been my biggest change, by going on the qualifications, spending time with coaches, watching, going on courses, now being on this side of the desk in terms of being a tutor and delivering the new FA framework. I probably that for me has now gone 360. So very much a player-centered approach. Very much probably now touching upon my pedagogy and teaching background, making sure that every session is almost like a classroom where the learners where learning's taking place. Really want to get as much ownership as I can into the players, and you know, really to allow them to develop a clear game understanding. I think that's probably the biggest shift for me. Whereas we were trying to tell them how to do it, now I just want to give them as many different options and as much flexibility and adaptability as possible. So that for me has been a huge shift, and I've really battled with that at times. And you know, I've got into confrontations and arguments with academy managers and heads of coaching, but I think I'd like to think that I'm quite confident and experienced enough now to know exactly what an Austin session looks like. So
that's good.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. In terms of your systems of play, I suppose, again, in your times in the last 15 years, like what did you find easier? The first question, what did you find easier to coach? attacking, defending? What kind of? Yeah.
I love coaching out of possession, Rich. I think because I was a defender myself, so I think if you speak to a lot of coaches, I think whatever position you played, you tended to go down that route. I think as well with the way that my mind works, I always kind of see defending as a bit of a science. It's either right or wrong, and that's kind of how my brain works. And the way that I work, I like to be very planned and very meticulous. And really, that's what defending is. There's an awful lot of structure to it. In terms of it in possession, I tend to. I probably am a very different coach when I'm delivering that. I mean, for example, I never have my whistle around my neck when I'm delivering in possession. There's a lot more drive-bys in terms of how I use. I kind of see in possession more of a creativity and art. I don't really want to be telling the kids how to do it because I want them to come up with their own self-expression and creativity. Probably something that we've stifled for too many years in this country. So that's kind of how I kind of see systems in terms of my own delivery. And you speak to any players that I've worked with, they could probably tell the minute that I stepped onto the pitch what their topic was tonight. If I had my whistle with me, 9 times out of 10, it probably was going to be an out of possession session, and probably that was where more of the Q&A and the command style coaching, which is just my own go-to, and it's my preference for that type of moment, etc. So yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Any preferred formation?
I don't really know, and again, I've battled with that a lot, Rich. I think I made the fatal mistake in my early career to kind of stuff all the players into the formation that the club gave me. So, for example, it's the first team under Harry Redknapp at the time. They played a lot of 4-4-2, so we had to kind of replicate that. The issue that I had with that, and I battled with that, was, well, what happens if I have players that don't fit a 4-4-2? It was almost kind of a question that we couldn't ask. But as I've kind of come towards the latter end of my coaching career, I kind of flipped that now. So really and that was probably one of the lovely things about Brighton, that we were given a little bit of self-expression. We weren't pigeonholed into a certain system. So I experimented with that, because the way that I kind of saw my role in that environment was just to pass them on the conveyor belt of development, not to pigeonhole them, allow them to play in different positions, allow them to experience different formations and strategies, because ultimately my role in their development is a very, very minute one, but it's to help them ultimately develop the complete player. And the best way to do that, Rich, is to play in as many different positions and formations and strategies as you can. So that again kind of corresponds to the journey that I've been on, and you know, it's something that now as an FA tutor, it's something that I'm adamant about. And I know we get challenged a lot. We get challenged a lot from some of our grassroots coaches about that, certainly about the positions and moving players around. But I've been lucky enough for 6 years. I worked for a club that gave us that freedom, and I really saw the benefits of it. So.
Yeah, Elliot just said on the chat that Chris Ramsey recently said you are preparing players for the game, you're preparing players for the club or the game, i.e. limiting them.
That's it. Yeah, and you know, I think it's something that probably many years ago we thought was right, just because of time pressures, Rich, if I'm honest. I think 10 years ago there was very much a time pressure on developing talent. Everybody wanted to develop players for the first team yesterday, if that makes sense. And I think we're now in a world where we know that every kid's different, every kid's on a different development pathway. So as a result, we've got to stop putting kind of round pegs in square holes and actually understand, well, you know, why don't we let them go through that experience, let them go through that psychological and social adaptation of playing in different positions, in different formations, etc. Because eventually that's what's going to make a more holistic player, and hopefully give them an opportunity to go and, you know, fulfill their dreams, etc. So yeah.
So, totally, mate. Coming on to around managing behaviours. You was obviously the 3 academies that you previously mentioned there.
Yeah.
What was that like to manage? Again, 2 parts of the question. One is to manage behaviours during the training session, for those who are listening, to maybe to offer any advice, but also whether being in an academy and being young players, I suppose trying to keep their head on their shoulders and not to think that they've made it already because they're in a club at a young age.
Yeah, I think to answer your first question, I'll be honest with you, Rich. I think for those that are listening tonight, or later on the podcast, for those of you that work in an elite environment, um, we don't have to deal with the same sort of behaviour management issues that a grassroots coach would do, just purely because they understand how lucky they are to be in that environment, and they understand that ultimately there are millions of other young boys and girls that would love to be in their position. So when it comes to the behaviour management side of things, I've probably been quite lucky in my coaching career. I probably had to deal with more behaviour management when I was a teacher in a classroom than I would do on the side of a coaching pitch. I think though what I learned very quickly in my career is that if you plan your session appropriately and you make sure that those kids are either kicking a ball, thinking about a ball, or engaged with a ball, behaviour management doesn't kick off. I think it's in those opportunities where the session's a bit slow, or it's a bit stale, or it's a bit like I used to do many years ago, lots of line drills, lots of repetition. When the kids are not engaged, that's when potentially is a potential grenade in a pot that's about to go off in terms of behaviour management. So I learned very quickly in my career, but by watching and some of the coaches that I've mentioned tonight, that we've got to get that intensity right. That if we get those kids, even if it's only an hour a week, they're there to learn. So we've almost got to make them understand that every second that you're wasting time is learning time, that we're not getting ready for the weekend and the game. So that's kind of something from really early doors for every team that I inherited. I kind of put all my cards on the table and was just quite honest with the players. That I'm not here to behaviour manage you. I'm here to develop you as players. And I think that, it's lovely to have that relationship with them and that open and honest relationship. But of course, kids are kids, Rich, and they will misbehave. Yeah. And one thing that I've also learned, probably from a teaching perspective, is that every kid's different. And you've also got to understand that you only see a snapshot of that kid's life for an hour a day. You don't know what baggage that kid's got, what's home life look like. So I think after I completed my youth A license, one of the things that we were really taught about that was, in order to coach the kids, you've got to get to know your kids. So I really tried to get to know the kids that I work with, just to try and help them, and especially those that maybe did press the buttons a little bit. That there must be a reason why they were doing that. But so yeah, that's. I don't know if that answers the question a little bit, but I think I've been quite lucky, and certainly from working now as a CCD on the grassroots floor, it is a commonly occurring question that we do get asked from grassroots coaches. I've got these really difficult kids, and so that's something for me is great, because I'm learning off them now. I'm learning probably skills that I've never really needed to use in my environment. So it's great. We're always learning, aren't we? Which is wonderful.
Absolutely, mate. No, that's cool. And just on that second part, like around, I get that. What was the youngest age group you had?
So at Portsmouth, I worked across the foundation phase. So I worked as young as under sixes all the way up to kind of on under 12s. When I was at Aldershot Town, I worked with 16s going into 18s, and then at Brighton was predominantly youth development, so it was 13s, 14s, etc. So I've been quite lucky, really, that I've worked across all the different development ages.
So in terms, especially this question is more directed to the older players you work with.
Yeah.
Like that whole thing about being at a club and at academy.
Yeah.
That stereotypical, like maybe chip on the shoulder that they've made. How hard is that to try and?
It is hard, Rich, because they see match of the day, they see the money. I mean, I was lucky enough that probably at the time when I was at Aldershot Town, it was prior to the world of Instagram and prior to kind of that visual hit that you just see. But I always go back to those days. That the first question that I asked those players was, "How was school today?" That was the first question that I asked them. And I remember one boy in particular one day, he said to me, he said, "Austin," he said, "every time you meet us, that's the first question that you ask." He said, why do you always ask that? And I said, "Because that's the most important thing. You've got to use your football as a release from school. Get your education. Make sure that you get your GCSEs, because there's only 0.018% make it, Rich. That is the current stat at the moment from a kid that enters the academy system under 9s all the way to the first team contracts. And, I would never share that stat with any of the players, because I'm not the person. I don't want to be that guy to break their dream, but I always have that in the back of their mind, and that's why it's so important that those kids, whether it's one day in that environment or 10 years in that environment, that they've got to get their school right first. Get a plan B, get someone to fall back onto, And if they needed reminding of that, I think I was in quite a nice situation, Rich, that I was a teacher by day as well. So I think that there was probably that respect, and it was something that I always was quite open and honest with the parents and kids when I met them at the start of the season, that I am a teacher, and I'm using this as a bit of a release from my day job, but also I've got that in the back of my mind that you need to make sure that this is seen as a reward rather than as a given. And that was something that I was very quick to remind them of if they did start to get a bit complacent, Rich, definitely.
No, that's cool, mate. So again, it's going to the academy part of it, like managing difference in ability. Was there much difference in ability even in the academy? So obviously to be in the academy, there'd be of a certain player anyway, but was there a huge difference?
Hugely so, Rich, because I work for 3 clubs that probably within their locality in terms of recruitment and catchment area, there was bigger fish in the pond in terms of badge. So I think Pompey at the time, they probably were unique in the fact that they had the whole of Portsmouth tied up. So we used to get the creme de la creme that came at that time, just because in that part of the world, it's quite a working class part of the world. Reminds me a lot of where I'm from in the north of England. Proper Pompey mushes, as they call them, in that part of the world. And the lads that we used to have were, they were desperate to play for their hometown team because they were watching their heroes at the weekend. So we had handpick in terms of that. So in terms of the potential and the quality of players that we played, that we coached, there wasn't an awful lot of difference. When I moved to Aldershot Town, there was massive difference because it was at the time, Rich, when the EPPP categorisation was coming in. We benefited off a lot off the back of Wycombe closing. I don't know if you remember a few years ago when Wycombe Wanderers Academy closed. We actually got a lot of their players, so we were very lucky. We tend to get the kids that have been released from the London clubs because they were in travelling distance. We were lucky in the fact that Crawley and Wycombe's academies closed, but then trying to merge that difference in terms of cultural ability. So we had a lot of London lads coming that had been street footballers. We'd had lads that had come from the likes of Chelsea and Arsenal that had been used to a bit of a silver spoon in terms of facilities and getting your boots given to you and all your kit washed. So then coming into a League Two environment where, it was literally a porter cabin. It was on a council pitch. That was our first training ground that we had in our first year. So we had to kind of put all those different emotions and put all those players together to somehow create a team at the weekend. But they were my most memorable years, Rich, because they were lads that had a point to prove. They were lads that were raw. They were lads that probably some of them had been a bit late to the party in terms of recruitment. And they were all lads that had a bit of, I'm going to prove people wrong, whether they've been rejected or academies closed. So there was massive difference there. But as a coach, all I had to do was just give them some fundamental structure, give them a little bit of shape. And at the weekend, I think it was just the passion and the pride that they had for the game that kind of all came together. And I think to this day, those 2 years that we had were probably my most enjoyable in terms of the players that we produced for the first team when Dean Olseth was the manager there. We sold a lot of players on for quite a substantial profit. So they were probably, personally for me, looking back on my career, they were some of my favourite years. Yeah.
That's good. That's good, mate. Sonny has just come on the chat. He says, read behaviour. Surely there is also the ability differences between academy and club, which affects behaviour. I find that the wide ability difference at our club is tricky to handle with respect to getting them more engaged and progressing as a player.
Yeah, and it is. And again, it's probably something that I'll be open and honest, I've never really had to deal with. In terms of where I'm at now in my role, it's probably come back to the point that I made, that I learned very, very quickly, that as long as those kids are engaged, as long as those kids are doing something to do with the ball, no matter what their ability is or the rationale for being there, hopefully that is the glue that's going to stick the whole session together. Now, of course, we're living in a world nowadays where some kids might have learning needs, some kids might have quite a lot of social and psychological issues going away from football that, grassroots coaches at times have to try and help with as well. But I think that's where the power of football comes into its own, Rich. And I think that's something that I've really, really enjoyed over the course of the last couple of months, really spending time with grassroots coaches, is seeing the power of that some of the male and female coaches that I've engaged with, they might be the only male or female role model that those young boys and girls have got in their lives. And actually that hour training a week is a safe space for them. So that that is, it is a very difficult situation in behaviour management. Gone are the days of when we can shout at kids. We're dealing with a very different generation nowadays. You shout at a kid nowadays, they will shout back. That's kind of how they're trained. And I think that a lot of behaviour management nowadays, and certainly with what we try to portray from the course, is about getting to know the kid first. Try and understand them, understand why they're there, understand maybe where that disconnect is in terms of why they sometimes show poor behaviour. But if all else fails, Rich, no matter what the level is, I'm a firm believer of just promoting the positive behaviour. So we've all got kids in a group that will be consistently your well-behaved kids, that will be role models and leaders. And, even in some of the most difficult sessions that I had, even in the elite game, I always used to turn to those players and use those players as role models, and kind of use the whole pack mentality and kind of like the pack leader control and manage behaviour itself. So they're probably some of the things that I've turned to and certainly learned across both the grass and the grassroots and my pro experiences.
And it's just added there. Captain's armband is a good one. People who are demonstrating desired behaviours. So it's good. It's a good example, yeah.
It's a really good example. We can't just have balls, bibs, and cones anymore in our kit bags. We've got to have captain's armbands and target cards because we're dealing with a different generation nowadays, Rich. We've got to engage these kids differently, and if it needs a captain's armband or an individual challenge, then if that gets them back focused again to help the flow of your session, then that's what we've got to try and do. So. Yeah, really, really good example.
Cool, thanks, Elliot. How do you go about setting team, individual, or unit challenges, Austin, in your days coaching, or no?
Yeah. I tend not to do too much, Rich. I'd always give a player an individual target, and I'd always give them, and that would always be linked to the team target. So. It's vital that we set targets. Studies show that, and you must remember that your kids will be spending 35, 40 hours a week in an environment called school where they're set targets every day. So they're kind of robustly trained at the moment to embrace targets and use them. The danger if we set too many targets, in my experience, is the kids just concentrate on those, and actually they then, if they've achieved the target in the first minute, then that's it. It's done now. What's going to engage me next? So I've battled with target setting. I've made mistakes. I've given too many targets in my career, and to the point where kids have got overwhelmed. But I think I'm at the stage now where I try and strip it back as easy as we can. I set an individual target, whatever that player needs, across four corners, and that will link into what the topic of the week has been in terms of what the team target is. So it's something that, again, you've got to know your players. I've also not set kids any targets because some kids just don't need targets, Rich. Some kids just want to have fun and play, and that in itself is enough of a target. So it's something, and my advice to everybody is have stuff in your locker, but you don't need to open your locker for every kid. And it's important that we just choose the right target at the right time for the right player, and you'll know that the more that you get to know your kids.
That's what I was about to say. Is that, again, it keep coming down to everyone is knowing your players.
That's it, Rich. That's it. And don't give them too much. Football's complicated enough, and I think sometimes coaches, we overcomplicate it. Certainly with tactics and set pieces and things like that. Let's give these kids more ownership. They understand the game, and FIFA's done that to us as coaches. It's killed this job for us. Your kids know stuff. Your kids know formations, and your kids know how to play the game. So all we've got to do is a bit like a driving instructor. Just keep on giving them little tips and make sure that they're on the right path.
Just talking about kids learning things. My 5-year-old boy watches football on TV, and he scored a goal in the Guardian the other day, and he did this. Fingers to his ears, went like that, and was like offside. I was like, you are having a laugh. VAR.
Well, there you go. That's what we're in. We're in the Generation Z, I think it's called, Rich. I think
it is. You're right.
A lot of time behind computers now. So,
a couple of comments come in. Dan says, sometimes ask their kids to set their own target and be ambitious. So it's that player ownership, what you mentioned a minute ago, Elliot. Steve said, heard something that stuck with me the other day. Targets and success should be measured with a compass, not a stopwatch.
Yeah, wonderful. Really good. It's all about that learner journey. That's a really nice way of putting it. And it's important that, like I said, that we don't overwhelm our kids. we don't. And if they're at the age and ability where they can set their own targets, then go ahead and do it. Why not? Let's give as much ownership. At the end of the day, it's their game. It's not ours. It's theirs. So we've got to give them as much support and confidence to kind of grasp it as we can. I'm definitely a firm believer of that.
Definitely. What's the differences in football from when you started in the game to now? So 2006 to now. It's 15 years.
Changed, Rich. It's not even the same game, if I'm honest. I think the biggest difference, first of all, are the players. The players are different now. It's a different generation. They just want to play now, Rich.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real positive. I think that has been a real positive swing, that we've finally listened to the one question. What's the one question that every kid's asked in the training session? When are we going to play a game? And it's almost like for the last 40 years, we've ignored that. And I'm delighted now that the courses are really preaching that in terms of the DNA messages. So I think that's been a big change in terms of the way that we engage with kids nowadays. The way that you engage with this Generation Z that we just mentioned is completely different than probably when I was a kid. If my teacher said to me that I had to do something, then I did it. I didn't question it. We're dealing with a generation nowadays where they will question it. And actually in a football context, we want them to question it, because then that's starting to produce that ownership side of things. I think the game's got a lot quicker. And that's not just from a physical perspective, but across all four corners. So players are going to be asked now and that's across grassroots and elite level. The game has got a lot quicker. If you look at mini soccer now, it's a bit like a basketball game. You've got it, we've got it, you've got it, we've got it. No one's got it. There's so much more transitions now. That transition window, it's down to 3 to 6 seconds. It certainly wasn't like that 15 years ago. It was an awful lot longer. So I think as a result of that, we got to adapt and change the way that we teach the game and evolve as we go along. I think we've got a lot more understanding now about player difference, certainly in terms of things like the relative age effects. The effects of puberty is a big thing. Diet and nutrition, looking at players' build. Also just little things, looking at when they're born in a year. I mean, I remember when I was really starting off in 2006, the amount of trialists that used to come into our environment, that we'd physically profile them at 7 and 8 years old by looking at mums and dads and go, nah, too small, released. And, it wasn't the fault of anybody. That was just what we thought was right. Whereas nowadays, I love working with the late developers. I love working with those kids that come later. And, you only need to have a look at the Premier League now and how many players that we've got that are not profiled to be 6'5" or a certain weight or a certain, I think that's probably where we've got a lot more understanding now of sports psychology and sports science and things like that. I think that's been a huge advance to the game. And I think the last difference for me, Rich, and the most important one is the support that's out there now for players. So certainly in terms of the mental health and understanding the brain and how that works now and the pressures and not only that, how kind of football can be used as a release from that in terms of creating an environment that's really fun, safe and engaging. But also the support that coaches have got now, Rich. I didn't get the support that coaches get. My support was getting sacked from jobs. My support was being dragged into disciplinary meetings when I did a session that wasn't right. Nowadays, we're getting in situ visits. The whole days of the pass and fail have gone. So I just think that we're in a much better place in terms of understanding coaching the game and also I think we're just understanding the players an awful lot more. I think that probably for me is the biggest shift that I've seen over the course of the last 15 years. And long may it continue. Long may it continue.
Absolutely, mate. I see your question. We'll keep that one there till this time. How do you final real question for me, Austin, is just around like overcoming problems within the training session, whether that be we've touched on it, like players' behaviours or I'm just trying to think what problems you would encounter in your previous.
You've got to be brave to change things at short notice. You've got to be brave, Rich. I remember an example once. I was in my first couple of months when I was working down at Portsmouth. I was down at Roco, which for those that might know it, it's a five-a-side play football court, and I had a coach who'd come down, an academy manager, and I was doing a session that I thought was right. He clearly didn't. with about 3 minutes of me starting the session, he comes running into the cage, says, "Stop, stand still, boys, go and get a drink," and takes over. And pretty much took over, because in his eyes, it wasn't what he wanted and it wasn't what the club wanted. And I remember driving home that night, Rich, and I was nearly in tears on the phone to my dad going, I can't do this, Dad. I'm not cut out for this. But I learned over time that actually he was right. The session wasn't going to plan. Probably not the right way of doing it, but in those days, Rich, that was what happened. And you kind of have to go with it. And I think it was also maybe a bit of a test for me to see whether I was cut out for working at that level or not. But I've learned after that you've got to be brave to change things. You've got to be adaptable. As good as it might look on a piece of paper and on a session plan, if it's not working and it's not getting your learning outcomes, and the players, most importantly, are not getting anything from it, then you've got to change it. And whether that might be subtly by making the area bigger or smaller or adding another challenge in, there's so many different ways now that we can do that. But, I think I probably in my early coaching career was a little bit arrogant and a little bit probably inexperienced enough to change it, and got me back up a bit when people challenged me. But I actually really enjoy that now. I really enjoy people challenging me and working next to me and kind of doing some co-coach work, which is certainly what we try and encourage on the courses. So I think the key thing for me is just to have that to be brave, even though you've got the parents watching and all the kids watching. The kids don't know, Rich. As long as they're playing football and as long as they're involved and it's challenging and there's an objective, they will not know, and they won't care if it's anything different than what your session plan looked like. So that's probably, something that I learned the hard way, with a few tears and a few arguments and a few embarrassments along the way. But I'm better for it now, Rich, if I'm honest. I really am.
That's good, mate. It's that whole learning, isn't it?
Absolutely.
In terms of like, how important is the review part of plan do review? Because I suppose
massive. Yeah, massive, Rich. And it was difficult for me because I wasn't full time in the industry. I wasn't lucky enough to have played at a high enough level, so I didn't have the kudos. And especially 10 years ago, I found it quite difficult for me because I'd come from a very different journey. I hadn't finished playing, and then all of a sudden just got a job in an academy football, which probably was what was happening 10 to 15 years ago. And I'm delighted now that the pathways for coaching and actually seeing coaching as a profession is there now. It certainly wasn't for me when I came into it in 2006. It was certainly just very fledgling. I think if I'm honest with you, I think the most important thing is to go and make mistakes and grab that opportunity and just be honest with yourself in terms of the players. I mean, I go back to the start of every single season. I turn around to my players, and the first thing that I say to them is, I will make mistakes this year. I will make mistakes on match days, which will choosing the wrong formation, the wrong starting lineup. I'll make mistakes in training that will confuse you. But the reason why I said that to him, Rich, was just to kind of show a human side to me, because I really felt that the players then felt comfortable under me, going, wait a minute, I've just met our new manager for this season. He's putting his cards on the table going, well, if he's going to make mistakes, then hopefully I'm allowed to make mistakes. So I found that really quite humbling, and that was probably something that I took from my teaching background that really helped with that, Rich. So, again, in my advice to people that are listening today, I'm still here. I've made lots of mistakes. I've got things wrong. I've lost games. I've probably confused players along the way, but it's all helped me in terms of the journey of where I am now. So, I think it's quite nice forum for me today to maybe just show that it is important that everyone's journeys are different, but we'll end up, if you're passionate enough and you go on your courses and you do your CPD, that you will come through it a better coach and a better person.
Definitely, mate. You couldn't have put it better. And it's just a couple of things here. So cancer does make the same journey about stepping back and being brave. If it doesn't meet the learning objectives for whatever reason, then it's not working and you need to adapt.
Yeah, well done.
You said that.
Well done.
Elliot says, I was once told, don't try and make your session pretty with someone walking their dog in the park. Make it as messy as it needs to be, as long as learning is taking place.
I wish you were there. I wish you were there on that cold Friday night many years ago. That's what I needed. I needed that advice on that journey home. But it's brilliant advice, and that's why I'm kind of passionate. I'm passing it down now, Rich, because I think it's important. Yeah. It's important that we show that we're human beings, and we've all got like in any career, people have got to where they are because of the journey that they've been on. And I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't change anything in terms of my experiences and the mistakes that I've made, etc., to where I am now. So.
No, good point. And Matt just quickly says, for me, coaching at a foundation level, it was part of my message into the parents of my under-sevens. And that will get lots wrong during the session, matches, coaching and managing kids. Yeah.
Brilliant. And it is the most powerful connector. That I found that really humbling, and it was something that I did as a teacher when I met my first class at the start of the year, that I will get things wrong this year. And I just think it shows a human side. I think in this industry sometimes there is too much bravado and there's too much kind of politics involved at times. I certainly found that a lot in my career, and actually to come across people that are quite open and honest is quite a refreshing change. So that's certainly kind of the way that I approach now. Certainly looking for the FA in terms of my own delivery, is that I'm quite open and honest to share to our learners. I'm going to learn off you today, whether it's a level 1 or a B license. That's the great thing about our job. We're always learning, and I think the day that you've become a closed shop and you don't let other people in, it is probably the day that it's time to step away from this as a job and an industry. So,
and that's why the people are probably here tonight, mate. They just pick up.
Yeah,
pieces.
Magpieing, as Mr. Coley says. I've worked with him many times, and that's what his favourite saying. So it's good.
Quick fire questions.
Go on. Yeah.
There we go. I know the first answer. Guardiola or Mourinho?
I've just read but I've got to say Guardiola. Go on, I've got to. But I love Mourinho because he didn't play, and he came from he was a translator, and he came from a similar sort of language background to me, and being a teacher. So but I'll have to go Guardiola because I'll be upsetting the people that bought these books for me if I don't.
And Mourinho is obviously out of possession specialist.
Absolutely. Yeah. There we go.
Number 2, through the thirds or direct?
Can I say both? Whatever suits.
I'll allow
whatever suits. Whatever suits. Don't pigeonhole a style. Whatever suits your players. Yeah. Whatever works.
So, Q&A or command style?
Oh, I can't sit on the fence. Command 15 years ago. Q&A probably more now. But again, I think it's the right coaching style at the right time with the right players. So don't just do one or the other. But I would probably go more Q&A now. Yeah, more.
Okay, cool.
You just want one word answers. I'm proper bypassing this, aren't I?
Constant random.
Random.
Good. Barca or Real?
Barca.
This is quick now. Foundation for youth development phase. Youth
development. I love that. I really love it. Probably because I've spent most of my career probably there, both in the classroom and on the pitch. Yeah, love that.
Good. Yeah. Striving to keep up or forging ahead?
Give me strivers any day of the week. Give me strivers, especially the babies. Give me those ones that people have written off because they're the ones that have a little bit more, I call it Bear Grylls in them. And they're the ones that come later. And they're the ones that will go on to earn an awful lot of money. They just need a chance. That's what I've worked with in my career. So, yeah, give me them any days.
Stop, stand still or drive by?
Again, I'm going to sit on the fence here with number 3, but I do like my drive-bys now. I didn't 15 years ago. We didn't even exist in that. God, if I did a drive-by, I'd be sacked. I do like stop, stand still when I'm doing out of possession. Drive-by when I'm doing in possession. Yeah, so I still think there's a time and a place for that. Yeah.
That's decent, right? Pass or dribbler?
Dribblers. We need more creativity. We need more creative players. Let kids go out, make mistakes, stop passing, get them. The game will teach them to pass as they get older. Let them get a ball at the feet, fall over, make mistakes, give goals away. We need to get kids that are comfortable with the ball. Yeah.
Decent, agree. And finally, Premier League or La Liga?
Oh, I've got to say Premier League because I'm hoping that Leeds are going to be in it next year. I'm hoping that my beloved, and after spending the last, I don't know how many years watching Match of the Day on Quest rather than BBC One, it is a dream that I'm going to be on with Gary Lineker. I don't even care if we're the last team on every week, Rich. Just get me them lines back on them sleeves. Yeah.
17 years, mate.
I know it has. Too long. Don't rub it in. Don't rub it in. Here we go.
We're just going to take a couple of minutes pause here. Obviously, 8 o'clock on a Thursday. It's clap for carers. we'll put that on. We'll just put a bit of music on. If you've got any questions, we'll grab them. I know you've got one question left, Austin. I've got for you as well.
That's fine.
We'll be back in 2 minutes, guys.
No problem at all. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate that. As always, we do Thursday, but definitely worth doing.
Yeah. Definitely.
In conclusion, Austin, from me anyway, before we head to Steve's questions and any other people's questions as well. If you could give one message to the coaches in attendance now and the ones that listen to it after the game to help them on their journey, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I get asked this all the time, Rich. I knew you were going to ask me this. I'm going to pass a bit of advice that someone gave to me down the coaching chain. Someone said to me many years ago, Rich, there's someone out there doing more than you, and you need to be a student of the game. So I'm going to pass this down the line now. Invest time in becoming a better coach and become a student of the game. So what I mean by that is do your qualifications, do your CPD, but more importantly, spend time on the grass and make mistakes. And it was probably, Rich, if I'm honest, the best bit of advice that someone gave me many years ago. That whole concept that someone's doing more than you, but actually, in order for you to do better than that, we have a choice to make. You either become the person that's not or the person that is. And that's probably something that is, certainly from a coaching perspective, has really stuck with me. So my advice to anyone out there, become a student of the game, make mistakes, do your qualifications, and spend time on the grass. That is the best bit of advice that I've kind of took and has certainly helped me to where I am now.
That's great, mate. I appreciate that.
It's probably more than one. It's probably more than one there, Rich. Sorry, mate. I'm not.
You've given us lots of decent advice throughout the whole half hour, mate. So it's been really good. So I'm just going to head over to Steve's question quickly. But Elliot said something that I missed a minute ago. He said something Tom Hartley said that stuck with me. Humans are hardwired to learn through play. Tom was on last week, and
yeah,
really good point, Elliot. It's great that you remembered that.
Yeah.
Steve's question, going back a couple of minutes ago, was do you feel the current quarantine will help reiterate the message that kids just want to play? They're not missing their leagues, the points, etc.
Yeah.
They're missing playing football. Any ideas on how we can jump on this reset of the status quo?
It's a really good question. I think, I mean, I'm not a father yet, but for those of you that tonight, I know, Rich, have you got a 5-year-old? Am I correct?
I've got 3 in total, yeah.
Oh wow, brilliant!
Yeah.
So what kids want to do is play. They just want to play, and I think for too many years we ignored that. And again, I go back to what I said earlier. It was probably the number one question that kids asked: when are we playing a game? It was almost that for too many years we were embarrassed and or maybe a little bit arrogant enough to ignore it. Because, you know, we've done all these wonderful session plans with all these line drills and we go on all these courses and we're going to try and put the entire course onto a Tuesday night. And actually we forgot about what the game of football is. It's an opportunity for kids to go and play. And it's an invasion game. And I think that to go back to the question, my advice to everybody out there is learn from your kids, your younger siblings, etc., about what they've done during lockdown. They just want to play. They want to live their dreams. They want to just go and have freedom. Of course, there has to be some rules and regulations and a bit of structure, but studies show that talent and potential, but more important, happiness, and that has to be the most important thing about football, will come from just letting the kids play. So I think it's hopefully something that we preach. Preach, probably not the right word, but it's something that's very much fundamentally ingrained in the England DNA with all the wonderful stuff that Pete Sturgis has done in terms of the level 1s and level 2s. So, you know, for every coach that's out there, just give the kids, like the idea of a driving instructor in a car. A driving instructor does not hold the steering wheel for them. A learner driver, all that they do is give them tips. So see the game as the car, the player as the driver, and we're the driving instructor. And all we're doing is giving little bits of tips and advice. And, you know, if you follow the kind of that idea in your head, I don't know if it works for the listeners, but it certainly does for me when I'm designing sessions. That's certainly how I kind of picture it.
That's really good, mate. We've got Pete Sturgis coming on to this podcast 2 weeks time, actually.
Oh, amazing. Absolutely amazing. I'll be listening in. His advice is gold dust. It really is.
Yeah, definitely. Steve, hopefully you're there. I'm going to take you off mute. If not, don't worry. To answer your question, I suppose my question for you is, how do you see it all going back once lockdown is over?
Yeah, it's hi by the way.
Hi.
You're right.
Okay.
You for an hour, yeah, you forget I've just started talking. Yeah, it's just an interesting one. I think it's I think a lot of people are sort of reflecting, not just in football, just on life and stuff as well, and just how this whole sort of rat race mentality that we've had for a good few years, and I think people are sort of, you're going to get people who are going to be happy to sort of take a step back and start again. And, I was just wondering how, if you had any ideas on how we could, as coaches and advocates of the kids' game, how can we get those messages across? Or
I think one of the first things that I would recommend to do, I mean, I'm not running a team anymore, but it's maybe to when we do get back together, is the first thing you do is to have a meeting with your parents and actually just maybe share that point that you've so eloquently made with us today, that, it's been a really difficult time, but it's also been a time for self-reflection and to press pause and maybe go back to the things in life that we've forgotten because we are so hectic, and actually put that into a football perspective. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to strip everything back. Yes, there's going to be structure. Yes, there's going to be a focus to every session, but I want to let these kids just play and play with freedom, because we've just seen in lockdown that actually that's all that they want to do. So I think that, if I'm honest with you, I don't think you'll have too much of a pushback from it, because if there's ever a time now to press pause and reset, it is now. My concern at the moment as a coach educator is everybody is going on webinars. Everybody is kind of doing CPD events. So people are probably writing down 1,000,001 ideas. And my concern is they're going to go to that first session and they're going to try and put them all into practice.
Yeah. So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think someone raised the question on another webinar last week, I think, where someone said, what would be a good thing to do when we go back? I sort of made the suggestion, well, why not just let them play matches? And but I think you're right. There are going to be a lot of coaches who've picked up a lot of stuff, and they're going to be sort of battle kind of thing.
Well, it sounds like you're very. It sounds like you're very confident with it, and you're very adamant with it, and just stick to your guns. I've said tonight, be brave, and as long as you've got that open and honest relationship with them. I found as a teacher that parents only picked up the phone to me as a teacher to make a complaint when they didn't understand what was going on. So I always learned from that to go, well, why don't we just put everything out on the table? This is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. You just experienced it. Let's just let these kids play. We'll give them some little bits of golden nuggets along the journey, but ultimately, let's just let them go. So, be brave with it. You'll have some pushback, of course you will, because all your parents will watch Match of the Day and they all think they're pro license. We all know that, but that's where you've just got to, you've just got to stick to your guns, which sounds like you will do, which is fantastic. So well done.
Good stuff. Cheers, guys.
Thank you. Stay safe. Thank you.
Brian, there you go. Someone's going back. In regards to getting kids playing, Austin, do you have any tips or ideas on how we can create an environment that allows free play, street football, jumpers for goalpost style?
Ball each, Rich, for me. I mean, I no matter what age group that I work with, I always spend the first 10, 15 minutes just get the kids with a ball. As soon as they arrive, like an arrival activity, as we coin it now on the new core courses, try and do as much unstructured stuff as you can. I know it's going to look messy, but that's what street football is. That's what kids are doing at the moment. If they haven't got a goal in the back garden, they're using plant pots, they're using bits of tree, they're using twigs. So actually be brave with this, and just really go back to I remember playing Kirby. I remember playing Wembley doubles and things like that.
Kirby was a game, man.
These are probably sports that we don't do anymore, but it didn't do us any harm, Rich, did it? And, I think that we just got to really go back to the essence of what football is. It's about fun, it's about enjoyment, but more importantly, it's about you being creative and just showing a little bit of ownership over what we did. So, that would be my answer to answer your question, is be brave, give them lots of opportunity on the ball. Don't worry about them passing. As they get older, the game will naturally teach them that. Pete will probably talk about this next week, but he talks an awful lot about seeing passing as an individual event first. So what he means by that is, in order for a kid to master a pass, they've got to master the ball. And the best way to master the ball is to love the ball. And the best way to love the ball is to just play with the ball. So, it's something that I'm certainly an advocate of it. I've tried it. I know it works. And, if I was to give a kid a ball, what's the first thing they'd want to go and do? They want to go and do some skills and score it into a goal. So let's just keep that essence of fun and enjoyment there whilst being a bit creative.
Yeah, it's good, mate. Brian, if you're there, I'm about to unmute you. Hello, Brian.
Hi.
Hello, Brian. How are you? Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks.
Good. Does that answer your question, mate?
It does. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah, it's really helpful. One question to jump in on top of that was, when I met Austin back on my level 2, we talked where a lot of players that are in the Premier League came from now, and how that sort of street football and the cages. How do you? Is there a way to try and recreate that opportunity and create that freedom for players to express themselves?
So, I mean, I don't know where you train, but if you train in a facility like a play football arena, then you've naturally got that. If you don't, put them into some real small-sided games, and be a bit clever in terms of how you group your team. So put big against small, make sure that you're doing games where there's lots of underload and overload situations, different ways of scoring. So you could have one team they've got to score in a goal, another team they've got to score by doing a flick or a trick. There are so many different ways that we can kind of manipulate the practice to mirror what kids have done on the streets. I think what we've got to do is get away from that structured stuff. The danger is, though, when you get away from the structured stuff, it looks a bit messy. And if it looks a bit messy and chaotic, then you're worried about maybe what the parents are saying. Well, that, again, is why that team meeting at the start of the season is so important, that you explain to your mums and your dads that are watching, or the guardians, listen, there might be times in training that we do stuff that does look a bit messy. And this is the reason why we're doing it, because we want to try and get back to probably what they did as kids. So, there is not one size fits all, but definitely loads of small-sided stuff, loads of mixing, matching the team. So forges with you striving to keep up, put early developers with late developers, different type of scoring systems, using your massively underloaded and overloaded. There's loads of different ways that we can kind of get that street element into it, where kids will just turn up at a park or a occasion in the city, and they'll just say, "Can I play?" They won't do any structured stuff, find out whether the forges, copers, or all those other things. I'll literally just ask that question: "Can I play?" So I think we've just got to build that in as much as we can on a Tuesday night or whenever you train.
That's great. Thanks, Austin.
Not at all. Nice to hear from you. All the best. Take care.
Bye.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, Brian. Sonny said, I don't know if this is maybe in relation to what you were saying a short time ago, Austin, but he says, I completely agree. I feel my role as a coach to support and guide our players.
Good.
Edit says, I think football is one of the only environments where there's been a tendency, although it's changing, to view them as mini adults and trying to make sessions and games like match of the day, which you literally just said a minute ago.
Yeah.
Then Dan says, one of my mantras, kids will learn from the game. It's our job to give them the environment and reinforce the bits that need highlighting. It's not our job to tell them what to learn.
No.
So really great stuff.
Really good points, Rich. And again, for a lot of those people, that probably, I'm sure, experience pushback. And I think I've said it a few times tonight. Be brave with this. We're asking you to be brave. We're asking you to come on board this wave, which, great, you've got Pete in a few weeks because it was his brainwave. And, it's an exciting journey that we're on at the moment. We don't know where it's going to end up, but what we do know is we had to change things. And in 2016, when we changed kind of the way that we teach the game in terms of the DNA being embedded, etc., we've seen such a lot of positivity and the uptake has been unbelievable. But it's only been an uptake because we've got brave coaches like you just mentioned there that are willing to have a go at something different. And that would be my advice, is to have a go at different stuff. And if it doesn't work, so what? And it's probably a really nice leaving message from that perspective.
Cool. Just to mop up a couple here.
Yeah, of course.
So Elliot says, I recently read an article about the 1-2-3 method in terms of how children learn it. I was going to say this all again. I recently read an article about the 1-2-3 method in terms of how children learn it. Spot on. What's the 1-2-3 method, Elliot? I'm going to unmute you now. I'll unmute you again. There you go.
Hello?
You all right?
Hello?
Hi, Elliot.
How you doing?
Put me on the spot.
I love putting you on the spot, Elliot.
Yeah, so it's quite an in-depth article in terms of the detail it goes into, but it's basically saying that you break it down with kids into the first thing they need to learn, which Austin's already touched upon, is that 1v1 relationship with the ball. So can they outplay someone 1v1? Can they dribble, manipulate the ball? The two is, can you then use a teammate to outplay, whether that's a 1-2 or whether using them as a disguise, and then you slowly introduce the third player. So how can that player maybe run in forwards or sideways to create more space? So it breaks it down into those three things, and I just think that is exactly how children. And it's easy for a coach to go, right, so I'm at the one stage now. Now I think I can move on to the how can I use a teammate. You're not trying to teach them the whole game. Good. You're teaching it in terms of 1v1, how to use a teammate, and then with the third player you can kind of get the width and the length. You don't have to tell them that, but you've kind of got more of a representation of the game, but it's simplified. And I just thought that article was like, that's exactly how we should be viewing it. And it links to all of the Pete Sturgis stuff.
It does. And it also probably helps answer the reason why at the moment we're wanting coaches, first of all, to get kids loving the ball and mastering the ball without getting obsessed with the whole possession, which I think we have done in this country for too long now, because we all watch Manchester City and Liverpool and they dominate teams 85-90% every week, and then we're expecting an under 6 at the weekend to go and do that. I mean, pass is the most common shouted word from a grassroots touchline. So that whole idea of one, master the ball, love it in a 1v1, then maybe bring your mate in, then maybe bring another mate in, kind of shows why, and I've said it a few times tonight, passing will come later as they develop. So no, I think it's wonderful. There are so many little anecdotes out there. So if that works for you, and thank you for sharing it with us.
No, that's fine.
Excellent.
I also think there's a big versus issue. Like we always do a versus. It's always, are you a dribbler or a passer? Are you long ball or short ball? Like even Guardiola says that the first thing you do when you get the ball is look up and play it as far forward as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
And even like Barca, I read an article about Barcelona recently. Their academy is obviously all about their short passing, but they still recognise that there's no point passing it and getting it into the final third if you haven't got that magician that's then going to score. So that you have to. There's no verses. It's that you need both of them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we've seen, I don't know how many times. Sorry, go on, Rich. Go on.
No, go on.
Well, I think we've seen in the Premier League this year when you've got someone like Ederson with the Harry Potter wands of left and right foot that he's got, and if he sees Aguero spinning off a centre half, he can drop it onto a slate to go and score. So that's why I think I answered your question when you answered me, Rich. I said both, because it's whatever suits at the right time. So good.
I'm just changing my question going forward. Thanks, Elliot. Cheers, mate. Steve as well, just quickly. I'm sorry, Austin. I know we've got a couple of minutes over it. Recently ran an in-house 3v3 tournament, had over 60 players. Players picked around the board and played. A team of 3 was selected randomly. They just played matches, then the remix of teams halfway through, did it all again. Players and parents absolutely loved it. A lot of love for that as well.
Well done.
So the whole thing about playing football.
It is.
And then Elliot's chatted a minute ago about all the Mavericks, Gaza, Cruyff, Bergkamp, all that from football in the street. So I suppose just let them play. And you said that a few times.
Well, we've lost them, Rich. We've lost a generation of Gazas. We have lost them, but they've come back now. If I look at our England Lions and Lionesses now, and certainly the players that I've had the pleasure of working with that are now playing in the Premier League, if there's one thing that they had in common a love for the ball, and that love inherently came from them playing on their own with their mates in an unstructured environment. So as much as the game has changed, as much as coaching's changed, and I think football's changing every second, the inherent ingredients of why we love this and why we're having shows like tonight is because we just want to play and we want to experience all those different emotions. And I think for too many years, we've taken that out of it, and it's produced too many robots, and robots at some point will get found out. And, but it's changing now. and I'm delighted that grassroots football is changing. And you know, tonight I'm having your guests and your listeners on, and who are very much advocates for what we're trying to show and explain and teach on the courses. Is, you know, it makes me very, very proud. So well
Definitely.
done.
I want to finish off from Dan there. I'm going to ask him about 10 different goals and his coaching back for one level 2 session. Creativity is so important for coaches as well as kids.
It is, yeah. I do. I'm a bit like a magpie. I go around and I've got everything from a Nerf, one of them Nerf, to a Frisbee to. But you know, I don't know. I remember going back to Mr. Fielder. We talked about my PE teacher. He was a bit quirky and he was a bit different. And you know, I didn't really enjoy school much, but I loved his lessons because I knew he was going to do something a bit different. And I've kind of taken those values and those ideas from him to where we are now. That, you know, nobody likes samey. Everyone likes something a bit different. And it's just, if we're going to produce innovative players, we've got to have innovative coaches first, because we're role models to our kids. So I guess the book stops with us, and it starts with us too, doesn't it? So
absolutely, it just made me laugh reading what you just said there. I'm sure one was a hockey ball too. I bet you say that to the kids with bad behaviour.
No, that's part of the world that I'm from. Up north, as my mum and dad said, that we built us proper.
Look, Austin, mate, I really appreciate you giving up your own time.
Thank you so much for tonight. No, honestly, I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight, and it's not the first one that we've done. I know, Rich. I've done 2 of the other match day ones, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And more importantly, what always amazes me with all your listeners and certainly the coaches that come on is A, how brave you are, but B, how much you interact with us as well. And it certainly makes these evenings worthwhile. So thank you so much, and a big thanks to Rivo as well, and for letting me come on tonight. And to everybody out there, stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully we will be seeing each other soon on a grassroots course or a grassroots pitch when we finally get back playing football again. So thank you so much for everybody.
Cheers, guys. Just let you know, Saturday there is no CPD session. We're having a week off. We'll be back next Saturday with a CPD, but we may have something on Saturday. I don't know at the moment, so just keep an eye on Twitter. And Tuesday is Liverpool versus Barca from last year.
Oh, brilliant!
That'll be a good one. But yeah, just to look after yourselves, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Thanks, Rich, again.